right about now. The Funk Soul Brother, check it out now. The Funk Soul Brother, right about now. Right up now, but check it out now. The Funk Soul Brother, right about now. Now.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Right About Now podcast. This is John Small. Okay. Well, if you've ever written a book or thought about writing a book or maybe launched a new service or a product, you've probably wondered, should I hire a publicist? It's certainly a question that occurred to me when I released my book, Right About Now, last year. Is it worth it to invest several $1,000s into having a publicist get it out there in the world in a time when, social media exists and there's all sorts of different sort of automated ways to get the word out there about your book or product? That is the question that I wanted to pose today to my guest, Kim Dower. Kim has spent the last several decades helping authors break through. She is a publicist extraordinaire who runs an agency called Kim from LA. And I have worked with Kim countless times. She has pitched me some of my favorite author interviews, including Joyce Maynard and Kristen Hanna, to name a few. Kim is also, as it turns out, a celebrated poet. And her latest collection of poetry is out now in a new book called What She Wants. So if you have ever thought about hiring a publicist, this episode might be for you. So Kim takes us behind the scenes to explain what publicists actually do for you. She talks about who really needs one and the common mistakes that people make when trying to get noticed on their own without the help of a professional. Now, I will confess, I kind of wish that I had hired Kim when I released my book, because although it's done reasonably well, I can only imagine had I saved up and invested enough to have somebody like Kim out there pitching me to sort of top podcasts and magazines and newspapers, probably would have gotten a lot more attention. So let's just say that I interviewed Kim probably a year too late, but I'm glad I interviewed her because now you can prevent yourself from making maybe the mistake that I made. So we talk about a number of things, including her new book. We talk about what publishers expect from writers today and how the publicity landscape has changed over the years, and when is the right time for you to consider hiring a publicist. Lots of really great, solid information here from a seasoned pro. Super excited to share my interview with Kim Dower. Kim Dower, welcome to the Right About Now podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you, Jonathan.
Before we launch into our discussion with you, I would love you to share one of your poems with us. How about from your new book, What She Wants? This is a poem called Visiting Baudelaire.
Okay.
Apologies for the pronunciation.
That's all right. Baudelaire. We just say it with an American accent. Baudelaire, that old guy. Okay, visiting Baudelaire. Walking miles through ancient air, skinny streets, my head filled with his clouds, like a tick fills itself with blood. I butter my baguette, length of a baton, as I stroll to his grave. Everyone has given me pre-trip tourist tips, where to go, what to see, every friend who's been seduced by Paris, as if we're all in love with the same woman, arguing over what's her best part, how long did she invite us to stay deep inside. I'm here for a week, my goal to visit Baudelaire's grave, and finally I've arrived, but with nothing to give except an unfinished poem, which I place beside the dried yellow roses, discolored pack of Gilloise, another visitor's engraved leather notebook. There's no place for me to sit and talk with him. The sun burns a hole through his magnificent clouds. And even though he's dead, I'm too shy to tell him how I feel.
That's a beautiful poem, so vivid. Now, when did you first discover that you love poetry so much? Was it?
I would say, I loved poetry as a child because I loved rhyming books. I loved, things that people don't consider poetry, like Dr. Seuss. Well, that's very much poetry. There's a meter, there's a rhyme, they're funny. It's all surprises. If you pick up, Green Eggs and Ham, you'll be fascinated, by his imagination, by the rhythm, by the music. And I was very attracted to books like that when I was little. I would read A. Milne, They're Changing Guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin Went Down with Alice. It had meter, it had pictures. So I probably always loved poetry. My grandmother would recite poetry in Russian. I didn't know what she was talking about, but the sound,
Just the sound of it.
And the sound of it, she knew Pushkin and she could recite all these things by memory because they taught them that, when they were little growing up there. So, but, and I wrote poems in high school, I can't even imagine what they were, but it was my freshman year when I took an elective, like we all do. We don't know what we're doing. We're just sort of, falling over ourselves, not knowing what to do. And I took an elective. It just happened to be the luckiest thing I ever did in my life because it was a poet named Thomas Lux who taught the class. He was only 25 or 26 at the time, but he was already fairly established and a great poet and a great teacher. And we were, declared poets in that room. You're all poets and this is your job. And I took it very seriously and never stopped.
Yeah, well, tell me about that. You never stopped. So when did you publish your first poem and actually get paid to do it?
Oh, well, now there's an interesting question. Get paid to do it.
Right.
Wow.
Was it many years later?
See, poets don't really get paid for their work. This is why poets are either university professors or, they start their online workshops or they have day jobs like me. There's poets who do all kinds of things, which makes them probably more interesting because they have jobs. They're doctors, they're therapists, they're, healthcare workers, they're or whatever they are, but they're not getting paid to write poetry. So I guess the first time I ever got paid, this is going to sound pathetic, but there's a great magazine called Rattle, and they actually pay you for your submissions.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. So, I might have gone out for lunch or something with what I got for that. I do now get royalties from my books, which is lovely, but I'm not a best-selling novelist.
Yeah. Well, what keeps you doing it then? Some people might say, well, what's the point?
Oh, I have no choice. It's not about getting paid. It's not about getting paid at all. I think that when you get the bug of writing poetry, if you seriously get that wave of joy from writing and revising and seeing it finished, reading it aloud, and those moments that you're in the zone, you're hooked. That's that. There's no reason for it at all. There's no financial gain. Some people do it for love. They'll send a poem to someone and if they love the poem, they love you, but of course that's not at all true either because the poem has really nothing to do with you, but you do it because someone taught you, someone who loves doing it taught you how to do it and you love it too. And with that, you go through your day. You do it because you learned to love it through someone else who loved it.
Interesting. Do you think that's always the case that you sort of, with poetry, you sort of have to learn it from somebody else? That was your experience for sure with this.
Well, I think before the college experience, I did, Erica Jong was the first poet I read in high school. People don't think of her as a poet. They think of Fear of Flying and they think of her novels. But in fact, she was a poet first. And she wrote two really wonderful books of poetry. One was called Fruits and Vegetables. which a boy from the 8th floor gave me when I was a senior in high school. And I still have that copy of Fruits and Vegetables. Probably worth a lot of money, but no one's going to get it from me. Anyway, I loved reading it then, but then I got hooked to writing it in college. But I think that it is a love that doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. I mean, some people I've heard say, "Oh, I started by writing poetry, and then I wrote a novel," or I started. And I find that interesting because I don't know really how you could stop. Like Erica, for example, still writes poetry. She never stopped writing poetry.
Erica Jong.
Poetry is like dancing. Writing poetry is like dancing, and writing prose is like hiking.
Oh, that's a beautiful. I like that analogy. So, what is it? So you say it's like dancing. So what is it about poetry? Is it the rhythm of it that resonates so much with you?
What is it about poetry? You get an idea, you get something that inspires you, moves you. We all reach, or many of us reach for a poem. We want to read a poem when there's been a huge emotional situation. Someone dies, someone is born, someone gets married, someone falls in love. You want a poem. It's the closest thing to an emotional feeling you're going to have written. It's brief. It hits it right, nail on the head. It's concise language. And I think that the same is true when you're writing a poem. Something moves you to write that poem, an emotional moment. Those same things that make you want to read a poem, make you want to write a poem. But I'll expand that to anything I could see throughout the day. Anything, I hear a line of dialogue, I hear someone say something, I think, oh, that's hilarious. I run upstairs, I take out my pad, I talk into my phone, and I write it. I say it because there's poetry everywhere. And if you see the world through that lens, through the lens of poetry, everything can be a poem, from a part of a dream to, the way you can't cut your steak at a fancy restaurant. I mean, anything can be a poem.
Yeah.
For me. So
that's really beautiful. I'm one of those people that was kind of got into poetry in college, but didn't really keep it going. But one of the things and I don't know how you feel about this, like, I feel like sometimes, like, for me, it was like rap music. There was a kind of poetry in the lyrics, and I would write these raps. This is when I was much younger, which were kind of like my sort of form of poetry. I don't know. Do you feel like music lyrics and rap lyrics and stuff are a form of poetry?
No, I think they're lyrics.
They're just different.
I think they're lyrics. They're lyrics. They can be great lyrics. They are written to be accompanied by music, by a tune. Now, there are, that's their function. They're a part of the whole. Now, this is a big discussion about Bob Dylan, who won the, Nobel Prize for writing. Now, you look at his lyrics, that's the only songwriter I could say is a poet. That's poetry. I just saw the movie and watched, the writing of those lyrics a lot. When you listen to that, when you see it on the page, that's poetry. It's fresh, it's new, it's surprising, it's beautiful, it's tragic. It doesn't need music to have its function of connecting with you as a human being and delighting you throughout. People used to say Jim Morrison's lyrics were poetry. To me, they're not. It's not poetry. They were great lyrics, and they really worked beautifully with the music.
So the distinction between him and Dylan is that the music, it was really, you couldn't have Jim Morrison's lyrics apart from his music.
I couldn't.
Yeah. One couldn't, or you couldn't.
Yeah. I mean, maybe some people can. There are lyrics that can fall closer to poetry. I mean, Leonard Cohen, but he also wrote poetry. So he wrote standalone poetry. He was published in the New Yorker. So, I mean, there are a few, exceptions, but mainly lyrics are lyrics. There's great rap lyrics. And of course, there's slam poetry, which is like rap lyrics. And I'm a fan of slam. When it's good, it's great.
Well, hey friends, the warm weather is here. So exciting. And that means lots more time for outdoor activities, renewed energy, and just a great time to refresh your wellness routine with a great tasting daily health drink. And for me, that drink is AG1. And how much do I love AG1? Well, let me count the ways right here. First of all, it tastes really good. Very important for me. It doesn't just taste like I'm biting into a bunch of vegetables. It actually has a wonderful, refreshing, almost sweet taste, although there's no sugar in it. It helps with my digestion for sure. My energy levels seem to be pretty high when I'm on AG1, and my skin seems to be a lot clearer. If that's not enough for you, I don't know what is. So if you're looking for a really good, delicious, healthy drink, AG1 is offering my new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs, which are really handy when you're going on vacation, especially in a nutrition desert where there's just not a lot of healthy food. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/rightaboutnow. That's drinkag1.com/rightaboutnow and get that special deal. All right, back to the podcast. So we should mention that you were a poet laureate, right?
I'm a former city poet laureate of West Hollywood, the great West Hollywood, California.
That's wonderful. How did that come about?
That was great, actually. I live in West Hollywood. West Hollywood does put a lot of money into the arts, and which is great. And they had their first poet laureate was a poet named Stephen Rains, Reigns. And we were friendly, and he was the poet laureate. This was years ago. And his tenure was coming to an end. It's a 2-year term, although now it's a 3-year term. And he called me up and he said, you should apply to be the next poet laureate. And, the word apply, Jonathan, it's just, that's
right.
That's not a good word for me. I have a very busy day job. I'm writing, I teach, and it's like apply, and add to that to go online and fill out an application and write an essay and all this. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be doing this. And he very kindly came to my office, sat next to me, opened the application, and started just filling it out for me. And one of the kindest gestures anyone's.
That's really. So what does one do as a West Hollywood poet laureate? What are your responsibilities?
I had a lot of them and I enjoyed them. So what you have to do, you have to come up with projects for the community. You have to come up with ideas to bring the community together to have an awareness of poetry. And I came up with what I thought was a great project, and the city really cooperated with it and helped me, which is to write a collaborative poem. So they made up these pads, and I had 4 prompts. And the prompts were, I live in West Hollywood because I love West Hollywood because what I can't stand about West Hollywood is, it was like that. And I spent a couple of months going around to the bars, the yogurt shop, the bookstore, the library, Plummer Park, West Hollywood Park, with these pads saying, would you like to participate? It was very funny. I wish that show Candid Camera was still around because,
right.
People would say, poetry, what's that? Or I hate poetry, or, whatever. But I got a lot of very responsive people. And they would fill it out, and I'd get their name on the back and their email. And then I had the daunting task of creating a poem from all of these lines. And I called it, I Sing the Body West Hollywood for the Walt Whitman, I Sing the Body Electric. And it was a great poem. And they made beautiful posters. We sent them to libraries all over the country. They made me recording, reading the poem, which is on the West Hollywood website. So that was one project. There were other things, like I taught in the schools. I taught a fifth grade poetry class, which is my favorite thing in my life.
Oh my God, that was great.
These kids have no fear, and they come up with great lines. And then I taught a class at the West Hollywood Library, which I still teach now. So I'm really grateful for having that opportunity, because they just kept me on. It was part of my duty as the West Hollywood Poet Laureate, but they actually pay me to teach on Saturdays. So it's great. I have a great group of people.
Let's shift gears here to the other career that you've had.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your origin story, aside from poetry, your professional origin story, because you're still connected to publishing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I have a company called Kim from LA Literary and Media Services, and I am a publicist for authors, not poets, because we've already determined they don't make any money, so they can't pay for me. Plus, I don't want to compete with my own work. You see, I have to have boundaries. Anyway. So, I mean, I moved out here like a million trillion other people from the cold, dark East Coast. And I moved out, for sunny, better life. And this was, in the very late 70s, where you could live in a palatial apartment with a view of the world for $150 a month. So anyway, I had all the different kinds of jobs you have, but I really did want to get back into publishing and writing and words. So I became a publicist at a small publishing house here in Los Angeles that no longer exists, but it was really fun. I was the person's assistant, and I was very young, and I could see all the different parts. And the one part that looked amazing was they had a job called publicist. And the publicist, at that time, no computers, no email. A publicist would get on the phone and talk all day and call journalists, reviewers, all kinds of people. There were no podcasts. There were radio shows. There were television shows. There were newspapers. And you had to kind of talk someone into covering an author's book. And I remember saying to the owner of the company, his name was Jeremy Tarcher. He was a wonderful man. He was married to Sherry Lewis, the puppet person.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I remember her.
You remember her?
Oh, of course, yeah, from PBS. Did she do the lamb? Was the lamb?
Lamb Chop.
Yeah, Lamb Chop. Lamb Chop was her. Yes, I do remember Sherry Lewis.
So it was an amazing situation, because I do remember saying to him, you mean I would get paid to talk on the phone and tell people to interview my author, So he said, yes, you would get paid to do that. And so I did that. I did that for him for like 3 years. And it was so much fun. I mean, it was hard, but it was great. It was in the days of all the, the shows that were on TV, like Sally Jesse Raphael and Phil Donahue and Oprah Winfrey. And you could get a lot of coverage for these books. I had a lot of fun doing it. And then I did a very difficult book for me, but I got a lot of play. And I thought, geez.
What was the book? Are you allowed to tell me?
Yeah, I can say. It was a book called Women Who Love Too Much, which became a phenomenon in publishing. It was a book. It was the first book that dealt with women's love addiction. And it was amazing. And what happened was there was a similar book coming out at the same time called Smart Women, Foolish Choices, which was very famous by two male psychiatrists. And my book was a little teeny book by an unknown psychologist from Santa Barbara. And I was competing against these guys. But the book was so amazing, so unique, so authentic, so important, that I did an amazing job of getting publicity for this author. I'm talking about People Magazine, Oprah Winfrey, things that you only dream of getting for an author. And it was a lot due to my perseverance, my love of the book, and my hard work. And I realized, wow, if you could do this, you could do this on your own. You could have your own company and do this. As much as I loved working for Jeremy and working for the company, I thought, what would it be like to choose my own books that I'm going to work on? Or have people come to me and I could decide, can I do that or not do it? And that was, I'll tell you, Jonathan, I'm celebrating 40 years this year.
That's
I started
amazing.
the company.
So you've been Kim from LA for 40 years?
I have been, yes.
That's incredible. Talk to us about some of the writers that you've worked with, the big name writers.
Well, I mean, it's hard to, I don't love doing that on a radio show. It's like, well, why didn't you say my name?
Oh, I know. Well, then I'll say some. Well, Kristen Hanna, that's how we first met.
Yeah, that's right.
She's a newer person for you. So I imagine a lot of people listening to this are wondering, should I hire a publicist? And of course, this answer has changed over the years as the book publishing industry has changed. But why should someone hire a publicist for their book?
Because you basically don't have a chance without one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
a chance for what? A chance to get publicity?
A chance to get the word out there.
Yeah.
The reason has changed over the years. Years ago, there weren't so many books being published. Not everybody was promoting their books. So there were certain books that were, absolutely, they should get publicity. They can get publicity. But now, everyone has a book. Besides publishers, what they're publishing, you have the indie publishers, you have the self-published, you have the hybrid. Everyone's fighting for the same 5 places, 10 places, 20 places. So if you have a publicist, I mean, look, it's a luxury to be able to hire a publicist. But there are people who have worked on a book for years. They have a savings, and it's a place to spend their money because at least you have a hope of getting something. And even if we're able to get some really high-end publicity, it doesn't necessarily mean the book is going to sell. So that's the other thing. But the reason you ask, why should people hire a publicist? There are a lot of people who hire publicists because the secondary job that they do or the next step in their lives is incumbent upon some sort of success of having a book. For example, if I have a therapist as a client, they've written a book, how to stop cleaning your couch. Okay, how to stop cleaning your couch. They hire me. No one really cares about the couch or how to stop cleaning it, but the person will get on the radio or whatever. They are psychologists. They deal with obsessive compulsive behavior. They want to get more clients, or they want more notoriety as that day job person, or they want to get a better advance for their next book. So it's a stepping stone. A lot of times hiring a publicist is a stepping stone to bring you a little higher to the next step in your career. And you hire a publicist to get the word out, however it's possible to do that, to get book signings. I mean, if you want to sign at a store, for example, there's rarely a bookstore that's going to talk to the author. I mean, authors would be calling every day, can I sign at your store? So publicists have relationships with the media. They have relationships with events coordinators at bookstores. They have relationships. It's a profession that has ties and the ability to help people move to the next step. And
by the way, case in point, I was at a bookstore in Culver City this weekend, and I happened to notice a big sign up on the bookshelf that said, "You were going to be doing a reading at their bookstore." Now, I mean, obviously, you have great connections at that particular. I mean, I'm sure you have great connections in bookstores around the country, but now it makes more sense to me that you were able to get something like that, right? Even for yourself.
Yeah, I'm going there tonight.
That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
so one of the things publicists can help you do, obviously, get reviewed in a major publication, maybe get a story written about you, do book signings, right, across, in different bookstores. What else can maybe get you some media appearances on TV, or I guess these days podcasts? I mean, I get pitched by publicists all day to appear on my podcast. What else can you do for writers?
Oh, I can take them to lunch. We can go to Nordstrom. I get them.
That's what you do with me. That's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. Get them a personal trainer, help them clean out their desk. I don't know. I mean, whatever, has to do with their book. I mean, I have a letter agreement that stipulates my services, and 9 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times, I will get a call like, can you help me with my marketing plan? Or can you help design this ad? Like, people don't read what it says in the letter. So, I mean, I'm not complaining here. I'm just saying that there are certain things that we do and that I do and that I know how to do. And there's other things I don't. Now, I think that when someone is interviewing a publicist, they can ask, do you also do this? For example, I didn't used to do this, but now I love to edit. I love to edit their essays. I love to come up with ideas for essays, which is a very good sort of tangential way to get publicity. If you can't get a review, sometimes you can send an essay, a thought piece or
an op-ed or something. Yeah.
Op-ed, or, they now call them personal essays. So I think because of the poetry and the writing, I'm much more steady and calm about editing a piece of work, and I'm good at it. So I will put in my letter, and when I'm talking to potential clients, I also help come up with ideas for essays and help edit them. So that's something that I definitely like to do. I personally am a media trainer as well as a publicist. So I used to divide my company actually and do media training, where you would come here and I'd work with you for 3 hours and put you on camera and help you. Well, I don't do that anymore, but I can help anyone get ready for an interview. And I will help focus people, because as I'm sure you can attest to, you get people on this show who suddenly stop talking or don't know what to say or go on.
Not all writers are media trained, but there's a reason they're writers, right? Like, they don't necessarily, maybe they're not the most social.
Yeah.
But I do find that most writers love to talk about writing, so that there's never a shortage of, but I know what you mean. Sometimes I wish they had a bit of media training. It occurs to me, the media landscape has changed so much. And I'm wondering how much you have to keep up with things like book talk, right? Like, which is like a new way that people are discovering books. Do you kind of mess around with that stuff, or you kind of leave that to the youngins to deal with? Not
I can't stand that.
Right.
I will. So I am lucky enough right now to have someone working on my team. I never used to say my team, but everyone says it. So, I guess
that's a good, you can say it. Okay.
Yeah. There's a few things I never used to say my team. Challenging. It's challenging. We used to just say things like it sucks, but now we say it's challenging. But anyway, I have someone on my team who is very proficient in social media, and he just answers questions. He finds influencers, another word that I would cut my tongue out before I would ever say, but there you go, influencers. So there are these other things. I tell you this. The same thing that sold books 50 years ago sells them today. Word of mouth, period. I just read What She Wants, a book of poetry by Kim Dower. It's the greatest book I have read in a year. I can't put it down. They tell someone, the person gets it, the person tells someone else. So word of mouth, the way to create word of mouth has changed. So we have TikTok, we have Book Talk, we have Facebook, so it's changed and gone nuts, but it's the same thing, but it's still sitting in front of a swimming pool in the summer, holding a book and someone says, "Oh my God, I just heard about that book." Word of mouth. That's what sells books. So I'll just say one last thing about that. I can get someone the best publicity in the world. And if no one wants to read the book, they're not going to read the book.
Right. No matter what. Do you ever say no to books? Like, do you ever read a book and just be like, there's no way I can sell this book? I mean, without being that harsh to the author, just be like, this is going to pass. Not quite in my, not a good fit for me kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Of course. I'll just say that I'm all booked up. But I mean, I cannot take on a book that I don't think I can get media for. I would be crazy. I mean, literally, I'd be crazy. I have this company for 40 years because I get results.
Right.
And if I don't get results, I have proof that I tried. And I have proof of what people said or didn't say. And if I start out thinking, oh my God, I mean, there have been times I've taken something on because it sounded great and the author sounded great. And then I'll read it and I'll go, oh my God, what am I going to do? I mean, I'll just be honest, that has happened.
Yep.
But I power on.
When should somebody not hire? Is there ever a moment that okay, so I'm imagining you're either, if you are with an indie publisher or you're self-published and the sort of publicity does not come built in with your publishing company, when would you make a decision maybe that hiring a publicist is maybe not the right step for you? Like you'd be better investing your money in other ways.
When would that happen?
Yeah. Is there any, I'm trying to think, like, if you're somebody, why should you make the decision? Okay, you have a limited amount of money to spend on your marketing budget for your book. Maybe you shouldn't hire a publicist. Are there instances where that you think that might be something that people should consider?
I don't know what else they would do.
Right.
I mean, I honestly, there's cheaper ways to do it. I mean, if you have a marketing background, if you understand what it takes to get the word out, and you could find an intern, you could find someone at a bookstore who can, accept a smaller fee, an hourly rate, you can sort of cobble something together.
Right.
But
yeah, it's you are definitely in the belief, and I mean, rightly so. You've been doing it for 40 years successfully. That is something that should be part of every person's budget. Now, let me change that question a little bit. Let's say you are published by a big publishing house, like a Penguin Random House type of company. Why would you then go to Kim from LA when they already have their own publicity teams within their publishing company?
Well, I mean, there's the answer I'd give you at lunch with the mic off, and there's the answer I'll give you now.
Yeah, exactly. We can all kind of imagine what that answer is at lunch. So tell me the answer you give me now.
Well, the answer I give you now is you can't do too much to help a book. Mm-hmm. And in-house departments are stretched thin.
Yep.
They're working on many, many books. At the same time, they, there's the incentive is not as high as for someone you're hiring. That's sort of your own person for a given period of time. And in-house will do what they have to do. And usually they'll do a fine job, but extra is extra. And some people want someone to say, did you try so-and-so? Now, in the old days, I guess the old days, you might say pre-COVID or pre-COVID, the feeling was you don't cross over. So in-house publicity departments were very suspicious of outside publicists. Mm-hmm. In that, don't tread on my territory. We're covering that. Don't cover it. We're covering it. Well, my feeling always was, what difference does it make if two people approach someone? They probably didn't hear the first time anyway, but I stuck to the rules. But these days, honestly, I don't think anyone cares about treading the same field. I mean, I think that we all, the idea is to get results, and the more the merrier, and different pitches are fine, and people are so distracted. I mean, you probably get 400 emails a day.
I do get a lot. Though sometimes I get frustrated because I feel like I'm not getting the right emails. Like, why am I not getting, like, I'll hear a author on a public podcast and I'll be like, why did they pitch me that person? You know, I feel sometimes like I get, I don't know, I wouldn't say the dregs, but I don't always get pitched the A-list people. Which is, I don't know why you think that is, because they're probably pitching those people to the New York Times. I mean, not to denigrate my podcast gets a nice listenership, and people seem to be very happy with the results, but you know, there's only so many like Fresh Airs and New York Times. You know, I get it.
Well, people may not know about you. I mean, there's so many that I wouldn't say it's because of what you are deficient in. I'd say it's what the publicist is deficient in. I mean, you know, and also with every new book, my team researches, because there's all these new, so I want to know, you know, books that would be good for, you know, film books, and books that would be good for mystery. I mean, podcasts that are good for mysteries, or podcasts that are, I mean, there's so many. And then you've got to go to the level of how many listeners. I mean, all this stuff takes hours of time. You know, it's a very tedious job. And then the pitching, you know. So, you have to change in the relationships, right? Like, the people change, the writers change at magazines, and you've got to establish new relationships or whatever. Podcasts. So obviously the publishing industry has changed a lot in 40 years. What are you sort of seeing as the trends that seem to be popular now? Like, I'm just curious. You know, I just finished recording a podcast, I just released a podcast about romantasy, which honestly, until I did that episode, I didn't even know romantasy was a thing. So it just shows you how like not in touch with the romance category I am. It was about a controversial romantasy novel that is being sued for alleged plagiarism. So I know, I've heard a lot that romance novels and romantasy are very hot genres, but do you see, like, what are you seeing coming out now that maybe wasn't so popular 40 years ago or even 10 years ago? You know, honestly, I see the same stuff. I see, you know, there's a lot of memoir. Everybody's writing a memoir. Everybody has a story to tell, and everyone's telling it. And everyone has a writing coach, and everyone has a, you know, all these things, and it's all fine. I mean, a lot of these books they're excellent books, but there's a lot of that. Big houses still want things that are going to sell. The difference that I see is that now, if you don't have a platform, if your other, you know, first or second book haven't sold enough, you're doomed. You know, they don't want you. So it could be a great novel, but you need to have that traction. You need to have, you know, they keep score. And,
well, it's interesting you say that, because you're saying about the first book, but I'm even getting your foot in the door for the first book. I feel like there's a threshold now sometimes. I don't know, this might be different for novels than it is for nonfiction books, but like, you have to have a certain amount of following, you know, a Substack or a podcast or, you know, right. So it's like, it's not enough to just have written a great book.
Right. It's not. And that's a big problem. And that's another reason why, to your original question, why hire a publicist? Because it's not enough to have written a great book. Look, there are the days when there were so many authors who never did interviews. Their books just sold based on reviews and word of mouth. Now you need a platform. It's really, it's not ideal. You know, it's not an ideal situation for writers. It's sub-ideal. And you need things that are, a lot of times, have nothing to do with your work, nothing to do with your writing. So, I mean, this is not the happy part of publishing. I still believe if you write a great book, I mean, if it is a book that people are going to turn those pages and cry at the end and love it, that book will find a publisher. It will find an audience. You know, they say that what moves an editor to buy a book is if he or she cries at the end of it.
Mm.
It's still going to be the thing. You've got to move people. You can have the biggest platform in the world, but if the book doesn't move the editor of the house, the marketing people, that book doesn't sell in-house. It's not going to sell out of house, and they're not going to buy it.
Right.
So, and the other thing is that people forget, because everything is so quick now, everything has to happen so quickly, but there's a lot of writers who took years in the making to get where they are. They're not out of the gate best-selling authors. And I've worked with many of them. They started small advances, small printings. Go to book signings, there'd be, 6 people. It's a career. You build your career, but no one has the patience. And publishers don't want to, like they used to, fall in love with an author and stick with that author until they hit. That's also gone, and that's sad.
It is sad. It puts so much pressure on both sides. And, as a writer coming up today, I mean, there's not even that much money to be made anyway. Why even do it? What's the point? Not that writers get into writing because of money, because there's never been a whole lot of money in writing. But like at a certain point, it's like the bar of entry is so high. I don't know why anybody would even do it. So what I sort of see happening is people are very much like doing genre writing, like rather than kind of writing their great American novel, and people still do that. But, they might say, and maybe this has always been the case, they might say, well, romance, a very specific kind of trope in romance novels is selling well, and so I'm going to write that type of novel and kind of break in that way. Yeah. So, romantasy being one of them. And then within romantasy, there's all these crazy tropes, forbidden love or whatever it is. So I wonder if people become more niche in their writing now.
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure that that's also true. And I know that horror is, very big right now. And all of these.
Yeah,
horror is. Yeah. But I don't know. I really concentrate on the books I'm working on, what I'm doing, and my own writing. And I'm not very interested in the trends of the industry.
Right.
Because that doesn't do anything for me or for my clients. I need to be interested in what people can talk about. So the trends of the world, although these days I stay away from that too, because the news is so difficult to take in. It's depressing and it's upsetting. So, but I have to be aware of what's going on in the world, right. And where my author might fit in, because no matter what, particularly if you write fiction, there needs to be some sort of hook to tie it into a current event. It can't just be about the book, because people haven't read the book, they don't care. But if the author is a lawyer who's written a book, if the author is this pilot who wrote a book about a plane crash, you talk to them as a pilot, not as an author. There's all kinds of ways around. We can't just get publicity for authors because they wrote a book. It just doesn't.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the reasons sometimes when I'm interviewing authors, it's not, especially novelists, because for me, it's a little bit hard to do an hour podcast about somebody's novel. And make it really super interesting, because it's a story that they made up, and because you don't want to give it away anyway. Right. And, there's only so much you can talk about the craft, et cetera, the process. So then it becomes like, well, who are you? That's now I want to know. That's why I always ask writers their origin stories, because I'm interested in finding a little bit about how they became who they are, and found success. And so, and if they have something else going on in their life, that's even better. So that's interesting. And I'm glad that you coach them in a way to talk about that stuff as well.
Well, you have to bring other things in. And more my origin story is somebody who always wanted to be around words and writing and writers.
Yep.
And even though I had a moment that lasted 15 years when I stopped actually writing poetry and was concentrating just on building my business, it came back because it does and it will. And now it's incorporated in my day job because it's just part of who I am and part of who I always was. But sometimes you let that piece go for a while. But, not everybody writes as a career for money, because more and more, as I said before, that's not where you're going to make your money. And that I guess it's sad. But look at some of the great poets. William Carlos Williams, one of my favorite poets, he was a pediatrician. He was a doctor. He delivered babies. Wallace Stevens, a great poet, sold insurance. He was an insurance salesman. And on his way to the office, he would write poems on a slip of paper and then drop it on his secretary's desk, and she'd type them at lunch. I mean, people have other jobs.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. That's the way it always will be.
You've met so many successful writers in your career. I'm wondering if, and just, and known them personally. I wonder if there's like certain common traits that you've noticed that writers tend to have. Is there something that you've noticed over the years?
Well, it's an interesting question. What you see is their personality, who they are, not as a writer, but as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing that I can say that's similar about a writer, like a thing about a writer that was, they can go opposite. They can tend to be real, just hovering over you, and they can tend to disappear and you never see or hear from them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really their style of how it might be an interesting thing to think about how someone does a book, how that affects their personality. The people who outline a novel, for example, versus the people who just sit down and let the character speak to them and go, no, those are two very different personalities.
Yeah.
And the outliner, interestingly enough, might be the person who doesn't read emails for 3 or 4 days in a row and doesn't have any continuity or get back to you when you have a question. And the person who lets it flow through might be the person on top of you all the time. But I think that the general, if we're talking about a really good writer or a real writer, not someone who's just writing a book to make money, or the commonality is the love of language and the love of words. And that is what brings writers together and readers together, that you care about this very specific thing that you're doing, that it matters, that you put care into it. And it's a very delicate situation because you're creating something out of nothing. And and I like being a publicist for those kinds of writers because I understand it. I understand what they're doing and trying to do.
And you also love words.
I do.
You have a share. Yeah, you share a common love of language.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, the book is called What She Wants. It's a new book of poetry. It is out now. Where can you find this? What's the best way to get this book, Kim?
Well, call your favorite local bookstore. And there's always the online place. Yeah. But I like to really push the indies, no matter where you live. You have an independent bookstore. Last Resort, is starts with an A, ends with an N. And I say support your local bookstore.
I say, hear, hear. Kim from LA, thank you so much for joining the Right About Now podcast. Well, thank you very much for joining the show. If you want to reach out to me, send me an email at jonathan@rightaboutnowmedia.com. Best place to follow me and get the latest information on classes I'm teaching or writing tips or stuff that's on